from the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. Consider This, a program of issues and information behind today's news.
How do I take the 2020 census? In March 2020, you'll receive an invite to a simple questionnaire. You can complete it online, call by phone, or send it by mail. If you don't respond, a census taker will follow up and assist you. Shape your future. Start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
Hi everyone, I'm Kathy Wyatt. Welcome to this week's edition of Consider This. Our topic, the 2020 census. Here to tell us more about it are Josie Gaddy-Schaefer. Dr. Schaefer is the director of Center for Public Affairs Research right here at UNO. Hannah Young, Public Policy and Strategic Partnership Manager for Nonprofit Association of the Midlands, and Mickey Devitt. Mickey is the Legal and Policy Coordinator for Heartland Workers Center. Thank you all for being here. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
You bet. Josie, we're going to start with you.
Yes.
Back to the basics. What is the census?
It's a great question, and it's a great time to be asking. The census is said right there in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 2 says everyone in the United States needs to be enumerated, so counted where they are. We had the first one in 1790, and we've done it every year, every 10 years since, so we call it the decennial census, every 10 years. And it is a count of everyone in the United States. We'll talk about this more, but it's used for sending tax dollars back to the states and where people are, as well as for political representation and creating political districts. So it's a really important part of, I would say, democracy and how we do things here in the United States. It has been a long tradition, and it's really important that everyone participate. It is required.
Okay, and outside of what we're going to be talking about today, what are some of the other activities of the Bureau?
Sure, so the United States Census Bureau is part of the Chamber of Commerce. It was not there at the first census, but as more people in the United States came and it became harder to count everyone, we created a whole bureau originally just for the decennial census, but now we do survey products from the Census Bureau throughout the year. So I'm actually the director of the Center for Public Affairs Research, and we are the lead agency in the State Data Center Network, which is the U.S. Census Bureau saying we're going to work with you all to disseminate data about Nebraska in the state. You know Nebraska the best. So if you've ever worked with us, you probably see data from the American Community Survey. That's an annual product, and a lot of other school finances, current population survey, and I think we're going to see next some of the population estimates that come out annually in between the decennial census. So we know how many people are there, but the census is when we get the actual count of every person.
Okay, speaking of data, let's go to our first graphic, Great. U.S. population 2010. So as that goes up, tell us what's important to note there.
Sure. So these are actually based on those actual counts. And so I think it's really interesting, right? A survey is a sample, and then we make inferences about the population. The census is the actual count of every person. And so you can see there from 2000 to 2010, our U.S. population increasing, and we wouldn't know that without the United States Census Bureau.
Well, let's drill down to Nebraska now, Josie, and talk about the numbers that we'll see on our next slide here.
So these are Nebraska's population estimates. 1999, that's the estimate right before the census, and then in 2000 we get the census count. And so on that one you can see we were off by about over 45,000. And we'll talk about it next, but every person not counted is lost dollars for our state and lost political representation. So that 45,000 off is not a good thing for Nebraska. 2009 to 2010, we got it a little bit closer, only off by 29,772. But we want to make sure we count every person. So that pre-census estimate coming into census, you can see isn't quite right. So we really need the census to make sure we get an accurate count.
Yeah, and we have one more graphic we want to put up for our viewers. This is what's been transpiring since 2010.
So since 2010, we've actually seen about 5% growth in Nebraska as a whole, but 66 counties have lost population. But again, this is based on estimates. So when we go to redistrict, we want those accurate, actual counts of every person in Nebraska to make sure we know who's here and we can get our tax dollars and get political representation in the state.
Yeah, Hannah, let's talk a little bit more about that. I mean, there are quite a few benefits here to be factored in, provided we are accurate. So talk a little bit about the benefits to Nebraska. And as you're doing that, we're going to put up some more visuals for our viewers.
Absolutely. So it's really important to note that this isn't just a one-year distribution of federal funds. This is our funds for the next 10 years. So again, it's not just the next year, 2021, we'll be seeing these funds, but all the way up until 2030. So our community obviously benefits the most when everyone is counted. So as you can see on this graphic, over this next 10-year span, one missed resident would be a little over $20,000. A missed household would be $50,000, and a statewide census count off by 1.1% is 40 million.
Okay, I want you to go through that again. I want to put that slide back up for people. That's
very powerful.
Pretty powerful information. If we could put that slide back up for our viewers. So go back through that again, Hannah, if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one missed resident in our whole state would be $20,000 lost over this next 10-year span. So if a whole household is missed, a little over $50,000. So being off by just 0.1% would mean $40 million lost for our state, which impacts so many things that all of us do.
Unbelievable. And when you take a look at those benefits and you consider that there are still people who are on the fence. And before we talk about maybe why, Hannah, tell us who those people are.
Yep. So it's a very big range of people who might have some fears. One is a citizenship question that a lot of people have been asking about over the last couple years. We are very happy to announce that they will not be on the census. So I know Nick is going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's kind of the number one fear is of what is the government using this information for. And then other than that, just general government fears, people coming to your house, not knowing who they are, etc. So that's the biggest fear.
Mickey, talk to us a little bit about that citizenship question, 2018, 2019, quite a bit going on with that. Can you go into more depth for us?
Right. Well, so when the Trump administration appointed Wilbur Ross as the Secretary of Commerce, he started the move to put a citizenship question on the census. And there was a lot of pushback on that. 3 states sued to stop it, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court in this last summer. In June of last summer, the Supreme Court decided that he had acted unlawfully in adding it, but in that interim year and a half, it really caused a lot of concern among the populations that Hannah was mentioning. So it won't be on the census, but that uncertainty for quite a time made a big difference, I think, in people's level of trust.
Well, and the other thing I was reading too, the Nebraska driver's license, we were the first state. Talk a little bit about that in terms of bringing that to people's attention.
Right, so that's an interesting question. It actually is part of a larger executive order, and people might see a few different iterations of that. So there was an executive order after the Supreme Court struck down the question that tried to gather that information in different ways through state and federal agencies. So our state agreed to share DMV data, but there will be other agencies people might hear about sharing information so they can make estimates of citizens and non-citizen residents. The thing that's important to remember about that from our perspective is that the data, however it's collected, is treated exactly the same as any census response, which is to say with complete confidentiality.
Okay, and so, yeah, because I was going to talk about that. Josie, did you want to add something?
Yeah, so I'll just say that there are other survey products by the United States Census Bureau that do ask that question, but because they're surveys, they're really sample data. With the census, this is tied to households where they are. And so there's real concern. So it is important to understand who is a citizen and not a citizen in the United States, and there are efforts to collect that information, but we don't like the idea of it being tied to where someone's house is, which is true in the census, which is true in the decennial census. So that's where it's been more of a concern.
Okay, so Mickey, if there are viewers watching going, yeah, right, or they're still a bit skeptical, if they were sitting in front of you right now, what would you tell them?
Well, so I would tell them that every single member of the Census Bureau is asked to take an oath not to disseminate or share any information that could be tied to a particular person, and the penalties are very stiff, $250,000 and up to 5 years in jail. It's a felony if they disclose that information. So although I understand the sensitivity of it for a lot of people, it really is protected in very serious ways.
Okay, and Hannah, education, very powerful tool in just about any realm, including this one. So there's a collaborative out there, educational collaborative really, called Nebraska Counts. Tell us about that.
So it started almost a year ago when we were kind of learning about the census and what nonprofits were doing in the area, in the state. And we decided, after the governor vetoed the bill that would have a complete count commission by the state, that nonprofits were the ones who are really working in their communities. They're deep in their communities and they're trusted in their communities. So a couple nonprofits came together and decided that we were just going to run with it and make our own complete count committee. So we did that, and we called it Nebraska Counts. So with that, we are going across the state and doing education to any nonprofits who want to help their constituents get counted in the 2020 census. So our goal is a statewide collaborative to get people counted in 2020.
So let's go back to when that was just forming, because sometimes we'll have guests on the program and they say, you know, we all just came together and now we're doing this. It's not that easy. I mean, you guys really do have to do some serious outreach before you do the outreach that the collaborative is wanting to do. So take us back a year ago or so to when this was really getting started, and your take on how it was really launched successfully.
Absolutely. It was honestly really launched in DC when there were 3 of us who went to a national conference, and we realized how much further other states were. We thought we were all there just to kind of learn, and then they all had plans, they had dollars, they were ready to roll, and we're like, we don't even know what's going on in our state. So that's when we came back from BC in February and decided we really needed to get rolling and we don't have any time to waste anymore. So that's when we, I would say, did the first real push.
So who were the lead nonprofits in all of that?
So it's my organization, Nonprofit Association of the Midlands, Civic Nebraska, and the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table were the 3 first people on board.
And how many nonprofits do you have involved at this point?
Now we have over 75 nonprofits across the state. So we are divided now by subcommittees. So we have people working in all of the congressional districts as well as the communications to make sure that we're all working together.
And how exactly is that managed?
I am the chair of the Complete Count Committee.
And she can still smile. This is great.
So I try to make sure that everyone is doing, their own thing in their own areas and they're doing what they want to do, but that we all kind of have a better knowledge. And then we're also reporting out to other Complete Count groups across the state to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and no one's getting missed, because we don't want someone to get missed because we thought you were doing it or you were doing it. So we just want to make sure we all know what we're doing.
Okay, with this particular topic, Hannah, I have to ask, in all of your experience, what has been the aha moment for you? Is there something that's come to the surface that you thought, oh my gosh, I had no idea about that in terms of the census?
I think just the magnitude of the census. This will personally be my first census I've ever filled out as well, so I feel like I'm learning with everyone. I was with my parents before, so I'm really excited to get it in the mail, and I'm excited to spread the word and really get people excited for something else to do in democracy. And voting is exciting and important, but this is something else where you can really feel included.
Take us to one of the sites where you're doing the education. Just kind of give us a sense of what that's all about. You go into a room, there's a small group of people. Are your presentations, pretty much consistent across the board? Kind of paint a picture of that for us.
So we do have, a standard deck of slides of here's what the census is, kind of like what we're doing today, why it's important, but we also want to tailor it to nonprofits and what they can do. So can they maybe just get the information out to their clients? Can they potentially have a laptop at their organization so people can fill out the census right there? Can they put it in a newsletter that goes out? Can they do a whole email blast about it? Can they put it on their intake forms? So there's a whole gamut of what we can do. We just have to kind of tailor it to each nonprofit and see what they can do.
Is there a most commonly asked question that you're getting?
Probably, do I have to spend money to do this? And I'm like, no. Okay. Actually, there's all these really awesome things you can do that don't cost a dime. And also, do I have to come up with something? What do I have to come up? Do I have to come up with an infographic to share on social media? Do I have to come up with the reasons why you should fill it out? Which, no, between all of us here and some awesome opportunities, you really don't have to do anything. We just need to get the word out.
Okay, thank you. Mickey, what else is going on to make sure that we are reaching those very tough to reach populations?
Right, so Hannah already mentioned the coalition, and our group, the Heartland Worker Center, is part of that coalition. One of the things that we can do is to reach out to the constituency that we serve. So we're in for a hard-to-count population. We serve primarily Latino, immigrant, and African-American populations in North Omaha, as well as some rural populations. So we are really at the ground level in terms of hard to count populations. And so what we can do is reach out to those clients as we're serving them, and in those community meetings where we already are existing, to spread that word. Another thing that I know that the Nebraska Counts is doing is to find the hard to count tracts, because they're actually identified on the Census Bureau's website. There's a tool called Roam where you can zoom in and see if you're in a neighborhood or a census tract that has historically had a high low response rate, which is a little confusing, but it's to say that you can see on a colored map where we might have some issues, and there's outreach directly targeted to those areas. So, and I think one other population people sometimes don't think of are the people experiencing homelessness in our community. The census does go out and actually canvass person to person and service organizations. So if you're involved in a service organization that serves the homeless or otherwise impoverished populations, those are target groups, and you can easily bring those contacts to bear on this.
So they treat, when you're talking about how they are counting folks, when you look at senior living communities, for example, large numbers of people living there, so they're reaching out to the point people and they're just basically getting the information they're needing through administrative type folks, correct? I mean,
there's a couple different ways to do that. So on campus, so in dorms, we have a similar situation, right. And so the census gives a couple options. They can send the forms, and they can go in and fill it out through administrative data. They can include all the students or all the persons in any type of group home, is what we call it. They can include them, or they can fill it out for them. We really encourage them to work with whoever they're supporting and filling out those forms to make sure we get accurate information on those census.
I was going to say, because the whole college thing is now bringing up an interesting question where you have parents at home who, even though their son or daughter is off living in a dorm or in an apartment, still consider that permanent residency to be at home. So talk about that.
Sure. So most of the time we really want to count people where they are. So if a student is off at college, they're going to be counted probably there, not at home. And there's even a question on the census that says, well, who's in your house right now? And then who's been in your house for most of the year up to that sort of April 1st as that census day deadline. So it kind of prompts people not to count people that aren't in the home currently.
Okay, what I'm really, really liking about this, well, of course, is the educational piece, but the collaborative piece. And Mickey, I want to go back to you because you are working with those individuals that we're talking about, and then you're also working with Nonprofit Association in the middle. And so all these nonprofits are learning more about each other and about the populations that they're serving. What have you seen, Mickey, from where you're sitting to be the greatest benefit in this collaborative?
Well, do you mean a benefit to our organization?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it really has plugged us into both our nonprofit community, but also the city and the county. There are city and county volunteer complete count committees too, and so we've been really able to plug in a lot of different ways with various levels of government, with various other partners, and really we've been able to see what they're doing also. We don't always know where people are canvassing or where someone might have a get out the vote action, but now we're communicating a lot more freely. It's been very fun.
That's awesome. I want to ask, once this is, and it's probably never all said and done, but April 1st comes and goes, and time passes. What do you see, Hannah, for the future of Nebraska Counts?
Yeah. I'm really excited for this. I think there will be a lot of reporting and getting together and see what happened with the census, but also, like you said, how can we continue to work together? Because these people who are to count tend to have similar issues with other nonprofits too, that they might not be as more likely to vote, etc. So what can we work together, and how in 10 years can we be easier to come back together and do this again in 10 years? That way we're not dropping the ball and making sure that we get even better count in 2030.
Well, and the other initiatives that can come from all of this too, with the nonprofits participating. I mean, the sky's the limit for all of you in terms of how you're going to be able to work together once you've formed this particular initiative. I know you're probably chomping at the bit about the questionnaire itself, right, Josie? So walk us through, and that's going to be in March, right?
So the timeline is now set, and it took a little bit to get here, but in March you're going to get a letter to your house. So it'll come in the mail to your house. The database for the census is to actually go out and count houses and make sure they have everybody, as well as using some of those survey products. But you're going to get a letter in the mail, and it's going to give you the option to go to a website. It's going to be a .gov address. Make sure it's a .gov address. And it's going to give you a unique census ID. At that point, you'll be able to go online, enter your census ID, 9 questions for each person in your household. You could be done really quick. If you don't want to fill it out online, you can call. Now, if you don't call or fill it out, again, you're mid-March, but they're hoping everyone will fill it out by April 1st, Census Day. If you don't fill it out by Census Day, they're likely to then send you the form in the mail. You can fill that out and send it back in. If you don't fill that out, then it's likely that a census enumerator will come to your house, and it does sound fun to meet someone from the United States Census Bureau, but it is very costly and very time-consuming, and so it could really delay data and information that we really rely on for a lot of purposes, for a lot of reasons. So we want people to fill it out as soon as they get it, and I think this online option, while very new for the United States Census Bureau, is a really exciting option and can make things a lot easier, quicker, faster, and that will help them and us.
Well, and this might be a really good opportunity for family and friends who know an individual living on his or her own who maybe doesn't check the mail very often, or maybe doesn't take, things seriously that don't have, something on there that's of interest to them. So maybe when they get their piece of mail, they reach out to those folks and just make sure, A, they've received it, and B, that they're completing it. If somebody doesn't receive it in the mail, they're talking around a table and maybe there's one person who hasn't received it, what do they do?
So, yeah, it's a good question. So we're really hoping that they start to hit in areas around the same time. So talking to people about it is the thing Census is asking us most to do, right? To let people know that they've gotten their form, it is safe, it's secure, and they can do it. Each letter does have a phone number that you could call and ask questions about or let them know. So that might be helpful. And then that same phone number too, if an enumerator does come to your door and you're concerned for any reason, you can call that number and they can check that that person is there at that time.
Perfect. Okay, and April 1st, no fooling, you've probably heard that a million times, is the National Day.
Right.
So what can we expect to see on that day or experience?
Yeah, so I think with the online option, it's going to be less of a day, right? Because you might have gotten it before. We're hoping that you've taken it by April 1st, but you're going to see a lot of social media promo. You're going to see a lot of media promo leading up to it to let people know that it is coming. It is from the United States Census Bureau. It is safe and secure. I think you'll see a lot of us around talking about the census. I think we're all sort of working pretty hard to make sure people know. But I think by April 1st, go ahead, if you have it, take it so that you're done, right? It's 9 questions per person in the household and you're done. It's an exciting day for some of us, but we'd really like it to be anticlimactic because everyone has taken it.
Okay, and Mickey, other than participating, how can folks help?
Well, so one thing that's already come up a little bit is that trusted relationships, your friends, your neighbors, are the people who are most likely to have an impact. And so organizations like mine reaching into the community where they already have trust can override some of that government fear, or fear of what the government's going to do with the data. So we encourage people to get involved with an organization like ours. You can volunteer, and then you can be one of those people that's doing that outreach. If you have a community you're involved in, that's the place that you're going to have the most impact and have the most trust.
Okay, so since we're on this topic, the name of your organization again, and just an elevator speech, 30-second synopsis of it.
So the Heartland Workers Center, we're about 11 years old, and we are a civic engagement and workers' rights organization here in South Omaha, North Omaha, and some of the rural communities around Omaha, just trying to build civic engagement and give people more information about their community. So
okay. Thank you. And Hannah, what about Nonprofit Association of the Midlands? What would you say about them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a capacity building organization. We have a membership base all around Nebraska. So we serve the whole state, all missions and sizes of nonprofits, and our goal is basically to help your nonprofit grow and be the best that it can be.
Okay, about 30 seconds. CPAR.
Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
I really like to focus on our data dissemination role. We're great at finding data, collecting data, using data, and then making sure it gets to the right people to make more informed and evidence-based decisions. In that role, we work with the census all the time, so we were one of the first calls. It's time to get ready. We built a whole website for them with a lot of their materials as well as the materials we've created for Nebraska, again, to get the information out.
So you're the people excited about the data
We are.
organization. I'm excited
We
for
really
you.
are.
Yes. Okay. So talking about 2020 census today, we're going to put up a graphic for our viewers. So if they want to learn more information, they can certainly go to any one of these websites. Before I hit those, Mickey, what is your website?
Ours is heartlandworkercenter.org.
Okay, perfect. And then you can also go to census.gov, cpar.unomaha.edu, and then finally nebraskacounts.org. Ladies, I want to thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your time and expertise. This has been fascinating.
Thank you so
We
much.
really do
We
hope to
appreciate
get
it.
people out there to be counted. Thank you very much. Thanks to our students who are working so hard behind the scenes, and of course to all of our viewers for watching. As we close, a look at downtown Papillion as seen through the lens of Jamie Harvey. She's a freshman right here at UNO. We'll see you next week.
Consider This is an issues and information program produced by UNO Television. More information and program archives can be found at netnebraska.org/considerthis. If you'd like to share your comments about this program, call UNO Television at 402-554-2516 during regular business hours, or send an email to cwyatt@unomaha.edu.